Ciao a tutti and welcome to Venice Talks, a podcast series dedicated to Venice in Italy. I'm your host, Monica Cesarato, a Venetian food and travel blogger. Join me as I share my insider knowledge to help you explore Venice at 360 degrees. In this weekly podcast, we'll dive into the heart of a city, uncovering hidden stories and connecting with the people who make Venice unique. The artisans, the writers, the fashion designers, the bloggers, the journalists, and more. Let's break free from cliché and discover the true essence of Venice, not just the monuments, but the vibrant people, the Venetians. Experience Venice the right sustainable way. You can find me on my blog at www.monicacesarato.com and across all social media platforms. Enjoy the episode and let's journey through Venice together. Welcome back to Venice Talks, Season 4, Episode 15. Hi everybody, welcome back to Venice Talks. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Simon and Jess, the incredible team behind the History of Venice podcast, who through their conversations, they uncover the stories, the people, the events that have shaped Venice over the centuries. Hi guys, how are you?
Hi, very well, thanks. Thank you. Very nice to be with you on your show.
Oh, well, new episode. It's not bad new. Or, for me, I think it's on. We are on the fourth year this year. I think it's not new anymore. But yeah. Anyway, can you introduce yourself and tell us all about the History of Venice podcast, how it began, what it's all about, and everything?
Okay, so I'm Simon. The History of Venice podcast began about 2 years ago. And, well, it's been about 6 months just of us thinking about it. It began because we were...
It took you so long?
Well, I wanted to do quite a bit of reading first.
Okay. Preparation, yes, I get it. Okay.
It began because we were both listening to various podcasts, various history podcasts. Mm-hmm. And... I started looking for one that would tell the story of the city of Venice from the point of view of Venice. And there were some podcasts that would have some episodes about Venice and Venetian history, but there was nothing that did this story in the way that I was hoping somebody would do it. And it's the same story that I get with a lot of podcasters like us. They say, well, we started making the show that we wanted to listen to because nobody else was making it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. It's same here. Yes, I get it. Mm-hmm. And you decided to start it together, yes?
Yeah.
Why? I know you're married. Okay, Jess, but just,
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Jess. I think I love listening to Simon tell me stories. I do genuinely. One of the greatest joys of my life is that I get this wonderful man who is just this like amazing font of knowledge and can do all this research and loves to do the research. And because we're both, deeply, deeply history nerds, it's just such a pleasure and a joy to get to hear these stories, particularly about a place that I think is just amazing and wonderful. And, when we travel to places, I'm constantly, at the end of the day, I have a little list of all the things we saw that we didn't have an answer for. And I'm Googling there and on the Wikipedia pages and trying to find more information about stuff we saw. Mm-hmm. And every place just has such a rich and amazing history, and particularly Venice. And that's just,
My question is, you don't live in Venice. You're not Venetians. You're not even Italian. Why did you choose Venice for such a detailed chronological history podcast? Logically, it would have made sense for you to do it about England, Britain, whatever. But why? No, I'm really curious, and I'm very happy because I wish some Italians and Venetians did it, because I think that's what Venice is missing. So why did you choose Venice?
So, well, first of all, other people are doing English history and British history on podcast form. So, we can't really add to that. But so this goes back to me at university, which is quite a long time ago. And I studied...
Time is relative.
Yeah. I studied Italian and history. And my final year, my specialist subject was kind of Venice, but in a very kind of narrow time period, so around 1550 to 1650. So that era of Venetian history, at least at that time, knew pretty well and in quite a lot of detail, but everything else was very kind of general and very superficial. I read, one general history book about the whole Republic, but other than that, I was very focused on quite a narrow time period. And there's nowhere else like Venice. Everywhere's great, everywhere's special, everywhere's interesting, but most cities you can go to and you can close your eyes and imagine what it might have looked like without the buildings and why people built there. You go to Venice and you think, this is utterly insane.
Yeah.
What on earth has happened here? How did this come into being?
Yeah.
And it's such a strange and such an unusual story. And it's quite poorly documented in the early years because of when it happens, but it becomes an incredibly rich story. And it's just, it's so full of fascinating characters, and it's so different from everybody else. Everybody else has kings. Venice is a republic. Everybody else is about land ownership. Venice has like a tiny amount of land and they make their money by trading. They do everything differently. And that is inherently a fascinating story.
They didn't just survive, they thrived on what everybody else would have just like, oh my God, are we going to do it? And I think personally, I think the most interesting part about the Venetian history is that it's very long and people don't realize how long it is, but it's also so changing all the time. I mean, sometimes you read the books and you just can't keep up with what's happening. It's worse than a Netflix drama. I actually think, like it's Game of Thrones. I mean, if somebody one day, and I wish somebody will do it, because I was speaking about this with Alberto Tosofei, one of the biggest Venetian writers, about this. I said, I wish Netflix sat down with some Venetian historian and said, okay, let's bring the history of Venice on the screen. It will be at least 16 to 20 seasons.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is why we wanted to go chronologically from the start, because it's so, Venice in the 700s, 800s is very different from Venice in 1200, which is very different from Venice in 1500. And you can go in and out and pick out the fun bits, and that's great. But to get a kind of context of how it goes from a bunch of guys in fishing boats and a few salt farmers to being this incredibly wealthy city that dominates commerce in the whole Mediterranean, it's a journey.
Yeah. And also to think about the military power that they had, and also how strategically, I don't know, they managed to keep 2 feet in one shoes for, centuries.
It's the winged lion classically has back feet in water, front feet on the land. And that's Venice.
Yeah. So the history of Venice is full of myths, conflicts account, because obviously there is history, but we also have to remember that a lot of the historians of the Republic of Venice were also very good at propaganda. And sometimes what they wrote wasn't exactly what happened. It was, let's say, an interpretation to, of course, promote the glory of Venice. So how do you decide what to trust, who to trust, and, how do you do that?
Okay, so this is also something that's used in policing. It's a thing called the ABC. Assume nothing, believe nobody, check everything.
Okay.
One of the things that you soon find about history is that whether it's somebody telling the story now or whether it's somebody telling the story hundreds of years ago, it tells you at least as much about the time when the person was writing as it tells you about the time that they're writing about. So in a sense, the story of the myths, the Venetian myths, is part of the story of Venice, in the sense that when people were writing this down, when Andrea Dandolo was writing his chronicle in the 1340s, what were his priorities in the 1340s, and why is he back projecting that onto the 1100s, the 1200s, and so on? So there's kind of multiple layers of history, but every author has their biases, and we have to be honest about the fact that we have our biases.
Yes, and we're very honest about the fact that we have our biases, because we very much do. I think that's an important part. That's one of the reasons why we chose this format as well, because I think you get to be a little more selective, so we can tell the stories we want to tell, and we can also, you know, amplify ones that are important to us, but also say, you know, where we think there are facts here that need to be known more about, or possibly, you know, ignored, or, you know, we can kind of say, okay, well, we're going to discredit that because for whatever reason, this just isn't, you know, valid to the things that we're saying here, or these are things that were not relevant at the time. But please go and research yourself if you want to know more about this, because there are so many sources. And I think, you know,
okay, well, it's easier for you too, because with someone speaking Italian, you do have access also to Italian written books about Venice, which, to be honest, I think is probably more than what is available in English. Okay. So I think it's easier for you, and that's why you're there, to give us the information. That's why you need it. I mean, obviously I can go and do my own research, I can read, but for many people listening to you, I think you are a great source. And I repeat, is amazing that even in Venetians themselves, most of the stuff that you say, you ask Venetian, probably they wouldn't know either, because you know, history of Venice is not really.
That's true of any country.
That's true. But you have to remember the Venetian history is not taught at school.
Yeah.
You know? In Italy, they teach us about Italian history, about the Romans, about whatever. But when it comes down to Venice, it's a mere little chapter, very, very tiny, when I mention the sea republics, and that's it. That's about it. That's important to Venice. Okay. So,
well, that's one of the reasons why we feel like telling the story is important for the people who want to listen to it, because, like you said, it's in a format that might be more accessible to people, you know, and that gives them an opportunity to open up and become more interested and looking for the different ties. I mean, in one of the episodes we did, I kind of stopped Simon for a minute, because, you know, he maps all of this out. He is the powerhouse. He is the writer behind all of this. He gives me these most amazing words to read and sometimes pronounce incorrectly. I'm very sorry. I'm trying. But I remember saying to him one time, like, well, hold on a minute. I don't really understand why this is happening. What's going on around it? So every once in a while, we actually stop for a minute and we'll talk about things that aren't particularly Venetian, but have an impact on Venice. And I think that kind of like holistic view is really important. In that episode, you know, we said, we're going to look to the north, we're going to look to the east, we're going to look to the west, we're going to look to the south, so that you understand it's not, you know, nothing exists independently.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I love that element of it, because I love that lens to put on it. And I hope what it helps other people do is to think a bit more critically as well themselves, to really understand.
Talking about this, how do you make a complex political and military history, which is a lot when it comes down to Venice? I mean, I always say during my tours, whatever, when I try to explain some, you know, in about 1 minute, you know, the history of Venice, I always say to the people, you know, that Venice literally was like fighting somebody in the morning, but if you got a message in the afternoon offering a better deal, by the evening they turn around the ships and they shoot former allies. Basically, that's what we were doing. So how do you make this complex political military history accessible without making it as simple as I just did?
Well, I suppose one of the joys of the podcast format is that you can just go off as long as you want, and you can go on as many if I think something's interesting to research, I will go and research it, and then I hope that people listening will find it interesting. But it's a learning process for us as well. But you're trying to think of what is a coherent story from beginning to end to tell in about half an hour, 40 minutes. And ultimately you're looking for an event and the surroundings of an event, or a person and how they're perceiving something. History is about people. Yes, it's very easy to tell history as here are some kings and here are some battles, but that, that misses out almost everything. The people that you're talking about are, in many respects, completely different from us, because what they believe about the world is something that is totally alien to us. What we believe about the world would be alien to them. But at the same time, they're just like us, because they have the same, they have the same emotional reaction to things. They have the same wish to form themselves into groups and then look at other groups and say, well, how can we get one over them, and so on. So you can always find ways in which it's relatable to you as a 21st century person, but in a completely different context. And that's what you're looking for, is to find a human angle and to say, well, how does this story arc go from A to B, and what is the surrounding context? And sometimes, sometimes we get lost in the weeds. Most of the time we hope we're able to tell, a relatively coherent story, but it's complicated, and you rely a lot on, where you've got, we did probably 11 or 12 episodes about the Fourth Crusade. So this is the very early 1200s, when through a complex series of situations, the Venetian navy ends up conquering Constantinople. Whoops. But the beauty of that was we have accounts from people who were there. So you can get into what they're saying, what they're doing, what they're thinking. And it makes it so much more human than just saying, well, there was this battle and then this lot went forward and did that, because you've got the accounts of the guys who were there.
But I think the interesting part about that is when we were doing those episodes, we had very little in the way of evidence of what was happening in Venice when this was happening. And I kept saying, like, wait a minute, what's going on in the city? Like, they didn't send everybody. They didn't do this. And, a couple of the doges, because we do kind of like basically, top doge and try to rate them a little bit to understand a bit more about each individual. And one of the elements that we rate them on is like, what is it like for the average person living in Venice at the time? And so far, it's kind of been really hard to figure that out, because again, we have this kind of great man, storytelling where we know about kings and things and not necessarily about the individual people. But during that crusade mini series, let's call it that, it was really hard to find out what was going on in Venice. Like, what did they leave behind? What were the people thinking? What were they doing? I mean, we know once the crusade is over, when they come back and they bring all their loot, what's happening in the city. But it's just like, if it was a movie, it was almost kind of like the whole focus just like shifted to the east. We didn't really know. Like, there might have been a little anecdote about it. And back at home, ... It just
meanwhile.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And it just, sources are always difficult, because what have we lost? What is no longer out there? And then how do we interpret
and also
them?
what people don't realize, for example, that in the archives of Venice, we just have this tons of evidence, tons of manuscripts and stuff, and only I think something about 5% of it, or something. I know that is a very small percentage, has actually been studied, because there is so much account. Because Venetians had this peculiarity, I think, that is a bit different maybe from other countries or other Italians, whatever, that we kept records of everything.
I love that, though. I mean, that's amazing, right?
But
when then how do we use them?
But listen, Jess, even when you keep a record of a shopping list, of your weekly shopping list, that is really funny, But it helps.
Historical evidence if you can find it.
Yeah.
Sorry?
His shopping lists are brilliant historical evidence when you can find them.
But when you keep like the monastery, they kept a record of every bloody day they went shopping. It becomes a lot of work to read through, Great, because you totally understand what they were eating, what they were buying, the diet and so on. But at the same time, that's a lot to go through. And I know this, some of the historian and researchers in Venice told me it's a gold mine, but at the same time there is so much they can't go through it. So listen, you bring many colorful historical characters to life. Which one, and I'm pretty sure each one of you has got a different one, which one has surprised you the most so far?
So far, I mean, we're in around 1230, 1240. It's been quite difficult to get hold of detailed stories of individuals up to this point. Actually, one of the stories that surprised me the most was not a historical one. It was a very recent one. I did an episode a couple of months ago about the Pink Floyd concert.
Oh,
from
yes.
1989.
Yes.
And I started that thinking this will be about 10 or 15 minute episode.
Haha.
No, that's 45 minutes. Because every time I thought I'd written the story, I found another, news report or another newspaper report or another interview with somebody who was there.
Should have got you to speak to some of the Venetians that had the opportunity. I was in England.
I had to stop because I had 45 minutes of material.
I was in England at that time. Actually, was in Venice just for holiday, but just before they came over and then I had to go back. So, but I could have got you to speak to some of the locals, and then you would have had some interesting.
Absolutely.
But I think, Simon, that seems to be the theme with everything, though. We think, oh, there isn't that much stuff, or there isn't that much information about this, and then the next thing you're kind of coming to me quite sheepishly, going, "I've got 12 pages." Now, 12 pages of text for us is about 45 minutes worth of recording. And I sort of just kind of smile and off we go and, we record. So, these episodes, effectively Simon's writing, a book, a chapter of a book every time he does this.
Hey, you should eventually gather all the material and we present it to Netflix. I'm telling you, we got to present it to Netflix. Listen,
so Simon, but who's... Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you say?
Well, he does. I was going to say there is a person that Simon would probably say would I know who mine is. No. What is yours?
Well, I mean, so Enrico Dandolo, Doge,
yes.
late 1100s, early 1200s. He comes with this reputation of, here's this greedy, violent conqueror who's a great betrayer. He's some kind of super villain. Mm-hmm. And you look at the first 95 years of his life, and you've got no evidence of that at all. You just got this guy who's a diplomat. He's probably quite a forceful negotiator. And then only the last kind of 2 years do you have any... But because the story of the conquest of Constantinople needs a supervillain, because it's it's a huge event. Mm-hmm. People impose this supervillain character onto Dandolo. Maybe he was, but I think we're short of evidence of that. It's just... it makes a more satisfying story because you've got this impossibly old, he's been blind for 20 or 30 years character who somehow seems to be able to manipulate everybody into the position that he wants. Mm-hmm. But when you look at it, when you just look at the evidence of the people who knew him, you think, there's no real evidence for that at all. It just makes a better story.
Mm-hmm. And that's what Venetians were good at, telling stories. No. Yeah. What about you, Jess?
Okay, so we've done a if you haven't listened to our podcast, we're doing a mini series on Casanova at the same time. We decided not to wait for him because his life is so rich, and there was the anniversary last year as well.
Yeah, one of my good friends just wrote a book about the dishes that Casanova used to love.
Yeah. So, but I think the thing about him particularly, because we're not very far into his life. I mean, I think he's like 25, but up until now, I'm excited to see what happens to him, because up until now, as I said, I'm really like, oh, this guy, like he's such a mess. I just think I know you're not supposed to put, your modern lens on people, but I just want to get him to therapy so bad, because I think he could have really, really benefited from it. And I don't understand.
I have a totally different opinion on this.
See, this is great. And I don't understand why there's an archetype called a Casanova.
I'm telling you, he had ADHD. Simple as that. I'm telling you.
Oh yeah, possibly. Yeah, possibly.
I totally. When you find out all the amount of things that he did, I just think he was ahead of his time. Simple as that. But he was amazing.
Don't listen. I'm not saying he's not, but I'm just saying he's just, he's such a mess. You know what I mean?
I don't think so. I don't know.
A lot of things. He finishes very few things.
Yeah, I know.
I just think ADHD. That's why.
I know. Yes, this is true. No, Monica, please don't get me wrong. I'm not like, this is in no way,
I'm just saying. See, because I got ADHD, I totally get it. But and I'm telling you, I don't need therapy.
No, I'm thinking more about like the relationship with his mother. Like that just breaks my heart. And his
poor
family,
guy. Poor guy.
and what happened to him?
Illegitimate son and blah 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 blah. Put you in contest. Listen, I think he had a great life compared to most of these people out there.
There's still a lot left to go, but I think sometimes I think it's also the parent in me sometimes is like, oh no.
I think I said in one of the early episodes, we're looking at him as though he was our kid, not as a person in his own right. So, stop doing stupid things. But he's going off having great adventures.
I know. Listen, has researching the podcast changed the way you see Venice when you visit it today?
Yes, I think
silence.
There's so many layers to that. It helps you to wherever you are in the city, there's always something interesting that's happened. There's always a story to look for. We did about a year and a half ago where we were in the city and we sat in Campo San Barnabas. And with just a little bit of research, we realized that whichever direction you looked, you're sitting there having your spritz or whatever, every direction you look in that little campo, there's a story. And you think, well, that's the same wherever you go in the city.
Oh, yes.
You're in this relatively quiet little campo. There's lots of people walking to and from work. You're 1 minute's walk away from the Grand Canal. And when you get there, you're straight opposite the church where Casanova was baptized. You've got the Ponte dei Pugni behind you where there was, famous fist fights between groups. You're in front of the church where Indiana Jones appears in that campo in the third Indiana Jones film. You've got the Casine dei Nobili where the poor aristocrats had their casino that they could run to help them. So everywhere you look, there's a story. And it makes you ask a question about every campo you walk through, every building you go past. And it makes you want to look at the whole lagoon and understand what was this place like?
I think for me, because I said I'm such a curious person anyways, and I always want to know more. What it's done is actually probably made that worse. because you have some of the stories that are very well known, and then I'm constantly wanting to dig around and understand. And then even just random houses, like I wonder who lived there. I wonder what their life was like. I wonder what this looked like 200 years before this building was built. And I think when Simon and I often talk about the podcast while we're walking our dog Sadie, and Sadie Walks has featured in our podcast as well about the things that we are thinking about and researching, but that part of it of realizing that because of the way the city was constructed, and that there wasn't a lot of land, as you know, that we don't have the same kind of layers that you would in other places where time moved differently. So, for example, we live in Suffolk in East Anglia. There's a town here called Lavenham. It was very, very wealthy in the wool trade. And then really about the mid 1400s, the trade dried up. So the town sort of got pickled in time. So you go there and it's beautiful. And, there's really nothing new there. That's because nobody lived there anymore. But where Venice, it's been constantly evolving up until, a certain point. It just, you're kind of wondering what's there before and looking at the layers and trying to find. And I think I look at things with almost like a map layer. I'll stand in the Campo San Barnabas and think, I wonder what this is like when they grew vegetables here. Like what would it have been like there?
I think what's very interesting in Venice is generally for the rest of Italy, I think it works is the layers is you see them in buildings. As in, it's layers one top of another generally, because they take a building.
Rome.
Yeah,
perfect example of that. Literally below street level, moving on up.
Exactly, and most of other parts of Italy. In Venice, it's not just on top of each other; it's also side by side. You have one building that is Gothic next to a Baroque, next to a Renaissance, next to a contemporary. It's just not layers. Up is layer on the side, layers down is layers, everything. I think that's what is different about Venice, and I particularly love. Guys, is there a popular belief about the history that you particularly enjoy challenging that when you eat it, you go like, that's not true. Like I do most of the time.
Yeah, lots.
Lots. I like that.
Well,
lots.
I bought a book last year. It came out last year. Called, well, it's an Italian book called History of Venice Through Its Fake News.
Oh yes,
This was,
yeah.
There was a group, it's Alessandro Mazzomagno and Piero Vezzi, a bunch of them. Yeah,
know them all friends.
Yeah, it's 200-300 pages of all of these myths, and a lot of them were invented in the 19th century, so after the fall of the Republic, and people start romanticizing the city. Yeah. So I think the common cliche about the medieval and Renaissance Venetians that they were just greedy merchants. I mean, it's true, but it's also it hides a lot, because I think Venice gets a bad press by contemporary historians at the time, because it was different from everywhere else, because everyone expects a monarchy and landed aristocracy, and the Venetians, at least until they started expanding onto the land, didn't have that. So whereas everybody else is just as greedy and just as violent, they think, well, that's normal and acceptable, whereas this is weird and strange from these Venetian people, because they're not like us. They're not aristocrats. They don't own land. So there's something grubby and bad about that. So they get a worse press, and they get written off as, oh, they're just after money. I don't think they're behaving that differently from everybody else, but they're doing it in a different context, because they're going out in ships and buying and selling stuff, whereas everybody else is, riding their horses and killing their enemies that way.
Yeah.
The idea that
which we did as well, but later.
Absolutely, yeah. I don't want to paint a picture of this, this paragon of virtue. It's as good or as bad as any other group of people.
Yeah, of course.
Obviously, the foundation myths are fun. They're also obviously nonsense, but as we said before, they're fascinating what they tell you about the people who are writing them, not so much about what they tell you about the Venetians of the 400s or 500s. The idea that Venice is all just art and rich decadent aristocrats, no, stop it.
Exactly.
I think mine is the thing that it's still a vibrant city. It's deeply saddening that people can't live there. Venetians struggle to actually live in their own city anymore. And so for me, if you're coming to visit, you need to come, and you should come prepared to, help benefit the city as well too. It's not an amusement park. It's this fantastic, amazing place full of culture and beauty. And you need to understand a bit more about it. You're not just going for, Instagram pictures and likes and such. You should go to learn and really, really understand, because it's so old and there's so much there that even if you just focus on a small part of it, it will enrich your experience. I think that's probably for me one of the bigger myths, is that there was nothing more heartbreaking than standing on St. Mark's Square watching these giant cruise ships sort of like do a drive-by, and they just dwarf the city. And the fact that they're not doing that anymore, just it does feel better, because it feels like it's back to kind of the size that it needs to be. But that for me, because its history is, it part of the fabric of who it is. It is why it is today. But what it is today is still just as important.
What do you think a history of the Venetian Republic can teach us today?
Well,
coming. I have a list that is like as long as my bucket list.
I know. I think for me particularly, because I have a scientific and environmental background as well too, and I always marvel at why Venice was where she was and how she managed to prosper and what's going to happen to her in the future as well. So for me, there's something about the fabric and the culture of people from Venice who make so much out of such hardship in such a challenging environment. And I feel like, given that, this amazing city and republic sprang up from these muddy mudflats and these fishermen, and, what they were able to do with it, speaks to me of just kind of like, blood, sweat, and tears, and who the people are and how they're going to be able to adapt in the future as well.
What about you, Simon?
So, I mean, lots of things. So the environment, the lagoon environment, is by nature constantly changing. And you look at throughout history, you can see the government having to manage the lagoon, having to look after the lagoon, having to work out how to keep this environment to their best advantage and not just overexploit it and damage it. And I think maybe there were some problems a few decades back where maybe it did get, I'm thinking about Porto Marghera and becoming very polluted and so on.
I'll stop you there. Let's talk about until the 1800s. From the 1800s onwards, let's forget about Venice. Because we lost the plot somewhere along the line. So let's talk about what they used to do and what we can learn, okay?
But I mean, looking after the lagoon, dredging the canals and so on was something that always happened. It didn't just happen by magic. It was hard work.
Of course.
I think it's really important to look back at the history of the Venetian state and remember that it got where it was by being innovative. It got where it was by being modern. It wasn't stuck in the past. The state always respected its heritage.
Yeah,
but it moved with the times, and this is stuff that you talk about a lot with contemporary artisans. They're doing historic crafts, but they're using modern tools.
Yes, that's what the conversation we had during your podcast. Yes, absolutely.
And that's important to remember when you're coming to a place that looks as though it's a huge museum, but is in fact a city where people still live and work and thrive. Yeah. It's not all just, respecting the past without being so slavishly tied to it that you can't do anything that's different.
It is a fine line, isn't it? You have to respect the tradition. You have to learn from your past, but at the same time, look to the future. I think there is a Venice problem right now. The people in charge, the people in general, are not looking at the future, or at least not at a distant future. They're just looking at the next day future and next day gains rather than, being projected in faraway generations. And as you say, they're a little bit stuck on the past, as in what Venice used to be like. Venice cannot be what it used to be anymore, but it can be something else just as good. It's just somewhere along the line they cannot find this link, and it's a bit sad. And I think that's why Venice right now is having big problems, But I repeat, the problems are not the actual living people there, the residents. I think it's just to do with whoever runs the city. They don't have vision, I think, generally speaking. I don't know, it's my...
In the telling of the history, one of the threads we found, particularly in early Venice, because that's what we're looking at, they seem to be really good at getting buy-in from the people. Now, whether they actually getting buy-in, so getting people to agree that this is the way that we need to go.
Okay.
And whether that's true or it was made up after the fact to show, everybody agreed with this, but actually at the time there were riots that nobody would talk about. We don't know.
They probably did like the fascists. They waited at the, outside of the house with a finger said, is a yes, knock on the head if it was a no,
But if they did, if it is true and they did, that means that the people were all engaged in like common endeavor. And that's really powerful. And I think, again, like I'm saying, that's if everybody wants that the good for it, then maybe they can look back to those historical parts of their, of what happened and look for those characteristics and try to find.
I personally think, knowing a lot of Venetians, working with Venetians all the time and stuff, what Venice right now has lost, the Venetians have lost, which the old Venetian had, is the ability to work together, to network. What we call now networking, back in the days wasn't networking, it was simply collaborating, same word but same thing. And I think that's what Venetians are lost now. They have become very individualistic. They find it hard to work together, because I think the moment that the Venetian realize that if they work together they can take back their city, that's when things can be done. But unfortunately you have tons of associations. Every day there is a new one born. Instead of saying, okay, let's work together. Now, I don't like you, but this is very Italian, okay? Because we do it with political parties, you know, when we're part of the same political party, we have a fight. Okay, I'll go and start my own party. Simple as that. And this is very Italian, and I think is, you know, which is something that maybe the Venetian didn't used to have. I think, you know, the guilds, you know, when it comes down to artisan in general, the guilds were a great idea. And I think something like that should be, you know, it was eliminated years ago, this idea of, you know, having to have certain licenses to do certain jobs and stuff. I think it should be brought back, because that then creates aggregation, creates people working together again, rather than working against each other. Guys, you're married as well, of course, and your co-host. What is it like creating a show together?
I don't know. Well, I always find that when I listen to podcasts, that I love it when the co-hosts have an easy rapport with one another. When a lot of the times they're, you know, friends, or they had the same interests, and you can tell, you can really feel it. And for me, that's really important. I mean, as I said, Simon does all the heavy lifting on this, and he writes me some amazing things to say. But you know,
I like the way he says it. He writes me things to say.
He does. So this is it. Yeah. And you know, he makes me sound really smart, and I love that now. But I think, you know, it makes it a lot easier, because basically we can be like, hey, after dinner, do you want to record? Yeah, okay, let's do that. You know, we kind of know each other's calendars really
so
well.
I was gonna ask you, how do you divide the research and writing, presenting? But I got it very clear. Simon does the research and writing, you do the presenting.
Well, you know, I'll read up on a story, then we'll discuss it. We'll go out for a walk with the dog. We'll discuss the kind of outline of the story, and then, you know, that will help to refine how it comes out. But because it's mostly scripted, so we're mostly reading from a script, and then maybe some episodes we'll have a chat, we'll have a conversation at the end or something. So, you know, to do that really is one person is writing a story, and then we're both telling it.
Yeah. I mean, I always say, if he ever doesn't enjoy this, if he ever wants to stop, we stop. But you know, if anything, you produce. I try to get him to slow down a little bit in the summer, but he doesn't seem to be able to.
How many episodes do you do, and how often do you actually upload?
Usually one a week, but sometimes it's one every 9 or 10 days.
Oh yeah, okay.
It depends. Earlier in the year, it was like one a week, every week on the same day, and then I had to slow down because it was getting too much.
It takes time, and I think, as a podcaster, at the end of an interview, I don't know you guys, I love it, because I love doing my interviews, and I miss it when I don't have people to interview, whatever. But at the end of the interview, I'm drained. I don't know you, but I'm my energy is like, whoa, okay, I got to do things, nothing to do.
Well, also, Monica, I am worried about him, because as we move in time, there are more sources. So all of a sudden, I'm getting these boxes being delivered, and I'm like, oh what's that? Oops. Oh, what's this? Oops. Books, more books.
I don't know if we're ever going to get out of the 1500s.
But listen,
how do you get through Marin Sanudo's diaries? You know?
I know. But by the way, it is one of the best times for Venice anyway. So, you know, come on, you should give it plenty of time. You know, it's, you know, I can't believe it. You read it way more books, and you know much more about Venice than I actually do. And I'm a local. I love that. Listen, last question. What would you like listeners to notice differently next time they come into Venice?
I think one of the things that I often think about the city is there's a facade that you see, and then if you just look behind it, you'll see a whole lot of other things. So think about, you're walking along, what's underneath your feet? There's a whole forest of trees underneath your feet. Mm-hmm. What's behind that wall? There's a whole story behind there. Look at how modern Venice coexists with old Venice, because you're looking at old Venice, but modern Venice is living in it. Think about that. Think about what's behind the surface, because that's where you get the interesting stories.
Mhm.
I mean, even to the extent of, so first time I ever came to the city, I was 14 years old. This is 1983. I was one of those day trippers. Apologies.
Oh, we
Sorry to
might
pay it back.
have crossed
And-
each other while I was going to school.
Maybe it was, I think it was July 1983.
Yeah, definitely I was
And
going to school.
I went in, I went into San Marco, walked around, went up those steep stone steps into the loggia.
Mhm.
And I see, so this is 1983, the bronze horses only quite recently had been put behind, put inside. So you've got these horses on the outside, which are modern replicas, and then you've got the originals on the inside. I could sit and look at those horses for hours on end. I think they're amazing. But it's a kind of representation of, you see something on the outside and then you go on the inside and you've got something more and something different. So always look behind the surface. Always think about what's under your feet. Always think about the modern city and the old city. I think that's, if I had to boil it down to those three things.
I think mine is put your phone down.
Yeah, of course.
Get lost. Like you can't get that lost.
Which is easy in Venice, okay?
Yeah, but get lost on purpose. Don't follow, the rat runs. Don't just follow the crowds. Go into the quiet corners. Look at things that maybe aren't perfect or pristine.
We respect, I got to say, because this is what I used to tell everybody to do. And now I'm taking a step back and I have to say, yes, if you do evil, please be respectful, because you might end up in a courtyard that is actually where people live and you start shouting and things. That's not nice. So we respect, of course. Of course. No, I'm not saying you. I'm talking about the people that are listening, because of course the world is big. A lot of people listening. They're all different kind of people. Let's remind them, let's say. But,
absolutely. But I think it's also then go and see the city and respect the city and wander around and really understand, that people live there. I think that's really my point is, people live there. And also try to stay in the evening, because Venice by night is a brilliantly beautiful and almost completely different city than she is by the day. And you just need to be able to experience that as well. But
9:30, 10 o'clock, everybody's gone. And it's you and the rats.
I know. Yeah, I mean,
you and my rats generally.
I know, but then just listen. Don't listen to the church bells. Listen to the water.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a fascinating. And I think the other thing I would say as well too, if you can travel there in different seasons, because again, it's so different in all the different times. Really, want to be there, not just to be there, but because it is a place that is worth going to.
Absolutely.
And guys, slow down. Venice should make you slow down.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, you're kind of forced to slow down anyway, because you got to walk everywhere, and most of the people are like with all the bridges and so on. But by the way, what's your website and where can people find you on social medias?
So you can find us, what are we on? We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on Blue Sky under History of Venice Podcast. I know we've been going nearly 2 years. I will finish making the website eventually.
But you can get us wherever you get your podcasts from.
I'm a webmaster. Just ask. I'm here.
So Monica, one of the things we're committed to trying to do is keep the podcast free and independent. So we just, if you want to write to us and tell us how great we are, I love reading every single one of those emails. If you have, a criticism or comment, I'll listen to those too. But, I genuinely am so grateful when we get messages. And I think one of my favorite ones was when I responded to somebody and she wrote immediately back going, I never thought that you'd write me back. Oh my God, this is amazing. And I'm just laughing because I'm like, I'm just a person.
I know. I feel exactly like you. I just love it when people leave comment reviews, send me messages. I always forget to say this to people. And the best for me is when I'm actually meet them in person. They say to me, they come for the tour or for something else. And they go like, we've been listening to your podcast and we've been doing the things that we're doing because we listen to your podcast. And I'm going like, oh, cool. It makes you feel that what you're doing is worth it. It's very nice. Listen, guys, I want you back on the show, though. Definitely. We need to speak about the women of Venice in history.
Oh, yes,
absolutely.
Please.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Because I've asked Alberto Tosofei to do it and he agreed to do it. But because he's very, very, very busy, to be able to book him on a show, it takes me like 2 years in advance. So it's too long. Okay, so we definitely, I don't want to talk just about the one that everybody talks about, because, Elena Corner and so on. I want to, if you can dig some Venetian women that people, might have not heard about, that will be interesting. I love that. Because
absolutely,
it will be, let's give back the power to women, because Venetian women were very, very important, and I think that's another reason why the other countries didn't like us, because the Venetians were more forward in in Venice and in other states. Guys, it was so nice talking to you, and I can't wait to have you back. Great. And have a great day. Ciao, ciao.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
Ciao, ciao.
Thank you again, Simon and Jess, for the wonderful chat. You can find Simon and Jess at www.eastvenicepod.podbean.com and on all social medias as History of Venice, and of course on all platforms as History of Venice Podcast. Thank you again for listening. Venice Talks Podcast is a production of Sentire Media, created, produced and hosted by me, Monica Cesarato. Follow Venice Talks wherever you get your podcast, and if you want to book a food tour or a cooking experience with me, you can find me over at www.monicacesarato.com and on all social medias with the handle at Monica Cesarato, where you can follow my adventures around Venice. And don't forget, if you love this episode, please rate it and leave a review. It's very much appreciated.